apparently there's a negative connotation to that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of traditional, but honestly, the more that I travel and the more that I grow, even as a person, I'm only 24 right now, but like the older I get, you see that like it's kind of changing. Like the tide is shifting a little bit. So I think there might have been like negative connotation, but honestly, like moving forward in Islam, like the legislation, like the legal code in Islam, it's fine. It's totally fine to get to know, and the parents as well. I personally, from a practical perspective, someone who's married, I would say that you want to make sure that you check first with the girl, or the girl checks with the guy if there's mutual interest, right? Before, and generally speaking, you both know. Like you're not just gonna go out of the blue, like there's hints, right?
Yeah.
That happened, right? So make sure you check first. I would recommend mutual interest first, scoping out the mutual interest, and then once you both have decided that you are not into each other, then you can approach the families, not just the parents, but the families, every part of that.
And you were saying dating, understanding these and per their ways, so you kind of like sidestepping what you want to do.
A healthy compromise.
Healthy
You
compromise.
shouldn't be walking on all over, but at the same time, you shouldn't walk on over someone else.
But since technically I would be the initiator, then I would have to do more.
Possibly. Take my email address. We'll talk. We'll talk. Take my email address. We'll talk. Yeah, sure. No, I'm just saying. No, I didn't mean that in a bad way. I meant like we got other questions, but I like where this is going. Any other questions, y'all? I say y'all. It's bad. I'm from Chicago, born and raised, but I moved to the South. It's like a plague. Once you get the y'all plague, you can't shake it. You can't shake it. It's bad. Any other questions?
How do you meet your wife?
How do you meet my wife? How did I meet her? My sister's here. I'm trying to figure out. We met like, it's gonna sound bad, we met on the internet, but not in that way. Like, we didn't meet like, I met on the internet, like, I write a lot. Like, I used to be a really strong writer. I graduated with an English degree, my concentration in poetry. So I used to write a lot of like editorials for magazines and newspapers and articles, and she was the head of her youth group in Memphis. And so she saw some of my writing and she asked me to write for her youth group newsletter. Back when newsletters were like alive, apparently. And then we just got to know each other through that relationship. And a popular question, like, boss. So we've been married for over 4 years now. So she's the best. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. So she's my best friend. That's why I booked my ticket home tonight instead of tomorrow morning, so we can keep it and go watch Sinister, whatever that movie is. Any other questions? Don't feel shy at all. Yeah.
Didn't the prophet have more than one wife?
He did have more than one wife.
At
Yeah.
the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
why did he treat all of them equally? Like, if you, that's right, you told about Aisha. Like, are there other stories about other wives?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, there are. So the prophet's lifestyle was polygamous, and again, this has a lot to do with the cultural context they were in as well. In fact, in Islamic law, it is illegal to have more than one wife in America because it is the state law, or the code of the national law. Well, not national, but most of the states generally don't allow for it. And so this is something that's culturally dictated. Even until today, there are many nations that have polygamous cultures, and you find this. And so it's not something that was necessarily Islamic in its essence, but it was something that Islam did adapt from the culture. Islam is kind of a beautiful thing because it kind of takes to the culture of where it is. There's a maxim in Islamic legal code in the books that are 1,400 years old that say al-adat muhakkama, that the culture of a place has a legal legislation. And what that means is that we should act according to the culture of where we live, right? And this is a religiously defined thing. So how did he treat them all equally? Well, as many of you know, right, we're all different people, and we all have different likes and dislikes. And so what the Prophet Muhammad, if you're following with you, you'd find stories where he would treat a certain wife a certain way because that's what she would like, and he would treat a certain wife a certain way because that's what she would like. In terms of spending time with them, he would just cycle through days, and he would treat them well. Also, they were not forced to be in the marriages. They could easily dissolve if they wanted to. In fact, there was a point where Aisha was even asked if she didn't want to be married to him anymore, and she said, no, I do want to be married to you. So it wasn't a tyrannical kind of like relationship. It was very, very mutual. They could leave or enter, like in terms of marriage whenever they wanted to. Whenever he proposed for marriage, it wasn't forced on anyone. They chose whether or not they wanted to. And again, we have to understand that when you examine a culture from the outside in, a lot of things are going to look weird to you. But when you examine a culture from the inside in, then a lot of things make sense. Maybe you don't agree with them. For example, I don't agree with polygamous marriage. As someone who was born and raised in America, as someone who studies with Islamic scholars, I know what is Islamically legislated and what I feel growing up as an American youth, right? So I feel personally that I do not feel comfortable with it. Does that mean that I'm a sinner? No. Does that mean that I'm not Muslim enough? No. It just means that my culture has shaped me in a way which is going to dictate how I live. But that's why Islam is so general, because it allows for you to feel comfortable with a variety of rulings. right? And so he would treat them well, and everything was voluntary. It was not forced. Cool. There's a show on TLC called Co-Wives, by the way. I don't know how that guy got more than one wife. Sister Wives, there you go. Very good. I was testing you. I didn't know, you know.
Isn't it like, it's legal though, he's just like pretending that they're like fake?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't watch TLC. I watch Lifetime Movie Network, though. He's always coming up the stairs with a knife. Okay. Any other questions? Don't feel shy. We have about 10 more minutes, so. That was a great question. I don't mind the elephant in the room questions. I don't mind them at all.
Question.
Yes?
So there are folks here that are not necessarily people of faith, who does not necessarily practice Islam. What could you share with people who don't necessarily, who are not Muslims in this room, to understand more about the Islam faith?
What could I share with you? Okay, there's a hadith, there's a narration that's attributed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It's 2 words. Everyone repeat for me. Ad-Din and Nasiha. This hadith is beautiful. Whenever anyone asks about Islam, this is the answer. The Prophet has said that this deen, which means a way of life, this faith, is sincerity. And then the companions asked, they're like, sincerity to who? That's a very vague statement, Prophet. And he said sincerity with 3 things. With your Creator, with God. If you don't believe in a Creator, then you can say like the existential transcendentalist power that governs all, right? And then with God's prophets, right? So sincerity in terms of their teachings and following them, and sincerity with your fellow creation on earth, man, animals, plant, everything, inanimate object, animate object. Being sincere with them. Being sincere and being helpful and serving them. The Islamic faith is based around this principle. That sincerity is the key to pleasing God. It has nothing to do with how big your beard is, or how big your hijab is, or how long your pants are. It has nothing to do with that. Those are part and parcel of the equation, but sincerity in the heart is the key. Islam focuses on purifying your heart and taking care of the impure and bad habits that human beings have. For example, backbiting, lust, or a lot of the major sins that humanity kind of understands and agrees upon, murder. So Islam's goal is to purify the heart from those things. Don't get caught up in the fact that Islam is a foreign religion. It's not really a foreign religion, it's a world religion. And if you look at Christianity, originally was from where? Jesus was not from Alabama, he did not speak English. Right? Jesus was from Palestine. He looked more like, okay, so I have to tell a story before I say this and I get arrested, which is, I was eating lunch with a pastor in Knoxville, a good friend of mine who played golf a lot. And he said, in front of everyone, I didn't say this, okay, for the CIA, whoever's listening, I didn't say this. He shouts in the middle of a restaurant in Knoxville, Tennessee, okay, which is not as redneck as most people think. Nashville's more the redneck area. But Knoxville, he goes, Jesus looked more like Osama bin Laden than he did a Swedish boy, right? And he shouts this out, and I was like, check please, right? But the point he was trying to make was like that we kind of see like Judaism and Christianity as these American religions, which is partially just because they've been here so long, right? But because Islam hasn't been established in America institutionally for more than maybe 50 years now, it's still a foreign faith. When in fact, if you study the tradition, the faith itself, not as someone who wants to convert you. Listen, I can't convert you. That's one thing that's beautiful about Islam is that we're taught we can't convert anyone. It's all up to God and it's all up to you and yourself. So like I can try all I want, but at the end of the day, I don't control your heart. You control your own heart, and so does God. And so that's kind of, it takes the pressure off of humanity. No one's going to try to like, proselytize or like try to evangelize anyone. It's not part of the Islamic faith. But if you study it for yourself, just for humanistic purposes, you'll find that its goal is to purify the soul and purify the heart. If you have any questions on it, you can for sure email me. I'm sure we can send it out to whoever's here.
What's your email address?
Arm like the body part, .mck like the Muslim community of Knoxville @gmail.com. Yeah.
I know there's a book called Guys Give Mars, Lowering the Gaze.
Yeah.
It's not Christian always said.
Yeah.
Same day for women too.
Mm-hmm.
So in this context, how can you look at one?
So, good question.